Well, good morning. Welcome to another Monday, and welcome to Morning Gospel Fuel with Mr. G. It is Monday, February 21st, the seventh week of Ordinary Time, and it is the feast day of Saint Robert Southwell. He was an English Roman Catholic priest of the Jesuit order. He was also known as a poet, a hymnodist, meaning he wrote hymns, and a clandestine missionary in Elizabeth, England. But he was arrested and imprisoned in 1592, and he was intermittently tortured and questioned uh, for his faith, and he was eventually tried and convicted of high treason because of his links to the Holy See in Rome. But yeah, so he was hanged on this day in 1595, and so he is a martyr of the church. And then in 1970, like almost 200 years later, he was finally canonized by Pope Paul VI as one of the 40 martyrs of England and Wales. So that is Saint Robert Southwell. Today's gospel is from Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29. Let's begin in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. When they came to the disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. Immediately, on seeing him, the whole crowd was utterly amazed. They ran up to him and greeted him. He asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I have brought to you my son, possessed by a mute spirit. Wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they were unable to do so." He said to them in reply, "O faithless generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I endure you? Bring him to me." They brought the boy to him, and when they saw him, the spirit immediately threw the boy into convulsions. And as he fell to the ground, he began to roll around and foam at the mouth. Then he questioned his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" He replied, "Since childhood. It has often thrown him into fire and into water to kill him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you can, everything is possible to one who has faith." Then the boy's father cried out, "I do believe, help my unbelief." Jesus, on seeing a crowd rapidly gathering, rebuked the unclean spirit and said to it, "Mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." Shouting and throwing the boy into convulsions, it came out. He became like a corpse, which caused many to say, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand, raised him, and he stood up. When he entered the house, his disciples asked him in private, "Why could we not drive it out?" He said to them, "This kind can only come out through prayer." Okay, so we've got the healing of a boy with a demon. And this is a very interesting scene to consider and ponder and take to prayer. But before I continue on with that, it does say this kind can only come out through prayer, but there's a footnote that says, and often is related, through prayer and fasting. Putting the spiritual with the physical by fasting and offering it up to grow in our spiritual lives and our faith and trust. So saying no to the body through fasting. Anyway, I think what we often forget is on, I think Saturday it was, I read Mark 9 verses 2 through 13. And then now we got the same chapter 9, and it's a continuation from 14 to 29. And what we need to see before this takes place is that the transfiguration of Jesus had just taken place at the top of the mountain, where Jesus showed himself along with Moses and Elijah to three of Jesus' disciples, Peter, James, and John. So they have this high point in their life, this spiritual encounter where they didn't even recognize Jesus at first. It was so unworldly, and it was so so divine. And then they come down from the mountain, and immediately there's drama. We're We're back to the world. We see the problems of the world that Jesus does, and the disciples and the crowds. And Jesus comes down with the mountain, comes down from the mountain with the three disciples, not all 12, just the three, and they're reawakened to what the evils of the world are, and that there are demons lurking and creeping up on everybody and inside their hearts. And so it's just a reality check of we need the high point. We need the spiritual life. We need to pray and bring ourselves to the transcendence of God in order to have any sort of worldly success down here, true worldly success, to bring people back to God. Because we see this healing of a boy with a demon, we have the crowds, we have the people gathering, we have this concern, all these concerns, and then what does Jesus do at the very end? He says this can only come out through prayer. So he's at the top of the mountain, goes back to the world, and then he references and he challenges us to go back to the top through prayer. But I think what else we need to recognize is whenever Jesus is talking, after he just had this divine moment with Peter, James, and John of the Transfiguration, he goes through and the disciples who have the power from God and Jesus, which are the one and the same, divine nature and human nature of Jesus, to drive out demons. Because Jesus said that he gave them that power, just regular Joe Schmoes, like these 12 apostles, right? But they can't drive them out. And so whenever Jesus is talking and he says, "O faithless generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I endure you? Bring him to me." I think, I'm not 100% factual on this, but it appears as if Jesus, "O faithless generation," is talking to his own disciples. How long will I be with you? How long will I endure you? Bring him to me. So Jesus had to take care of it because of the disciples, because he finishes the verse with a discussion with his disciples in private, because the disciples are wondering why they couldn't drive him out. And Jesus says it can only come out through prayer. Where he's virtually telling his disciples, quit being weak, man up, have some faith, and pray. Like actually pray with faith. I think that's the challenge for today. Are our prayers prayed with faith? I'm speaking to myself, and do we truly lift ourselves up to the divine of God? Because if we want to do any good works here on earth, we need to have a strong faith and a prayerful conviction that we can trust and have hope that Jesus will indeed answer our prayers if it will help build his kingdom. And so our challenge is to always go up to the mountain and seek our consolations and confirmations of what it is that we do in our lives through God, in prayer, taking it to him, and actually dialoguing with him in our process and our grind, and realizing that sometimes we will be shaken, but Jesus is right there to reawaken us and tell us like it is. So, with all that being said, have a great day. God bless. Keep it real. In the Father, Son, and Spirit. Amen.